Jim Smith in Chopper 2. We are following a rally in Foley Square in support of immigrant families and strengthening access to immigration legal services. This is a coalition of New York State elected officials, advocates, legal service providers, and impacted community members. It's happening in Foley Square, the intersection of Lafayette and Center Streets. It began at about 9 o'clock this morning, and we can see where the crowds have gathered and speeches currently being made. Again, this is in support of immigrant families and strengthening access to legal services. The campaign is being called Care for IF, and as we can see, there are several people again in Foley Square. Speeches currently being made. This rally kicked off at about 9 o'clock this morning with the situation yesterday in Minnesota. Of course, this brings a new light on the subject. Again, this coalition is a group made up of statewide elected officials, legal service providers, and impact community members that are in support of immigrant families, providing greater access to legal services. Started at about 9 o'clock this morning at Foley Square. Of course, it's at the intersection of Center and Lafayette Streets. So far, no streets have been closed off. As we can see, a number of the crowd, possibly around 100 or so, give or take. It's unknown exactly how long this event is expected to last, but right now it is ongoing in Foley Square. Again, traveling in the area, no streets have been closed off at this time. Of course, it is always a possibility with various rallies as the crowd size grows. That's always a possibility that we could see some street closures, but nothing at this time. The event appears to be orderly at this time as well. And we will continue to follow the situation. You can stay with us here on CBS News New York as we follow this rally again in Foley Square in support of immigrant families and strengthening access to legal services for those families. And if you're just joining us, we are following a rally in Foley Square, Lower Manhattan. This coalition is known as Care for IF. It is in support of immigrant families to help strengthen access to legal services to those families. It's a coalition made up of New York State elected officials, advocates, legal services providers, and impacted community members. Again, this is happening at Foley Square. The rally kicked off at about 9 o'clock this morning. Currently, we could see the crowd that has gathered. Speeches currently being made. It's unclear how long this event is expected to last. Again, this is in Foley Square, Lower Manhattan, Center Street, and Lafayette Street. At this time, no streets have been closed off, as we've seen in the past with rallies such as this. As the crowd grows, that is always a possibility that we could see some street closures. It's also unknown whether the group plans to stay within Foley Square or if there is a plan to march as well. But of course, we will follow the situation and keep you updated. For now, you're going to stay with us here on CBS News New York, and we will follow along again with this rally ongoing at Foley Square. We are continuing to follow a rally in Foley Square, Lower Manhattan, the intersection of Lafayette and Center Streets. This is a rally that started at about 9 o'clock this morning in support of immigrant families and help to strengthen their access to legal services. This is a coalition made up of New York State elected officials, impacted community members, and legal service providers. Again, this rally started at about 9 o'clock this morning. We can tell you that at this time, no street closures have occurred. Again, this is Lafayette and Center Streets, Lower Manhattan, just a few blocks away from City Hall. It's unclear at this time whether the group plans to hold a march as well, or if the entire event will take place within Foley Square. As we've seen in the past with rallies, there's always the possibility that the crowd could grow, and that would maybe lead to some street closures, but at this time, nothing has been closed off. Again, Lafayette and Center Streets open to traffic at this time. Again, this all started about 9 o'clock this morning, a rally in support of immigrant families, the group known as Care for IF, helping to strengthen legal services or access to legal services for immigrant families in the community. It's a coalition made up of New York State elected officials, legal service providers, community advocates, as well as those impacted in the community. And we will follow the situation here in Foley Square. Now we'll just watch along as this rally unfolds. We are currently watching a rally in Foley Square. It is in support of immigrant families and gaining access to legal services. This is a rally that started at about 9 o'clock this morning. Foley Square, the intersection of Lafayette and Center Streets in Lower Manhattan. Currently, there are speeches being made. This time, we're unaware of any plans, whether the group plans to march or keep the entire event within Foley Square. We can tell you that at this point there have been no street closures. Everything is still open in the area. Right now it's a crowd numbering around 100 contained within Foley Square. We are not seeing crowd size big enough to spill over into the streets at this time. And as you can see, the event's still ongoing. Many participants showing up with signs, speeches currently being made. Again, this is the organization campaign known as Care for IF. It's in support of immigrant families and helping to strengthen access to greater legal services. We will continue to follow this event. Stay with us here on CBS News New York. If you're just joining us here on CBS News New York, we are following a rally in Foley Square, Lower Manhattan, the intersection of Lafayette and Center Streets. This is a rally that kicked off at about 9 o'clock this morning. The campaign known as Care for IF, it is in support of immigrant families and helping to strengthen access to greater legal services. It's composed of statewide elected officials from New York, community advocates, legal service providers, as well as those impacted in the community. You can see the rally still ongoing, and many of the participants showing up with signs. Currently, speeches being made. There appear to be two areas of Foley Square where groups are gathering. Unknown at this time whether there are any plans to hold a march associated with this particular rally, or if the entire event is expected to be contained strictly within Foley Square. If you're traveling in the area, no street closures have occurred. All of the streets are open in the area. That is always a possibility. If the crowd size does grow, that we could see some street closures, as well as if the group begins a march as well. But again, at this point, we're unaware of any plans of a march being held. You can see the event still ongoing. Unclear at this time how long it's expected to last. Again, this is the campaign known as Care for IF, in support of immigrant families and obtaining greater access to legal services. We will continue to follow this event. You can stay with us here on CBS News New York. We are continuing to follow a rally in Lower Manhattan, Foley Square, the intersection of Center and Lafayette Streets. This is the campaign known as Care for IF. It is in support of immigrant families and obtaining greater access to legal services. The group is composed of New York State elected officials, as well as impacted community members, advocates, and legal service providers. We are watching this rally as it continues. It began about 9 o'clock this morning. At this point, we're watching now a portion of this crowd start to march out of Foley Square to the south. So as we were mentioning earlier, previously no streets have been closed off, but we're now watching as this one portion of the crowd begins to march over towards Lafayette Street. Okay. Thank you. They are currently marching away from it to the south. Unclear which one this is. And we are continuing to follow a rally in Foley Square that is currently marching down Center Street. They just left Foley Square moments ago, passing Reed Street. We were monitoring the rally, which began around 9 o'clock this morning, which was in support of immigrant families and helping to strengthen access to legal services for those families. We are also getting reports that there may have been multiple demonstrations so it's unclear if this is the group CARE 4IF, which was in support of immigrant families, or possibly another demonstration that it also began to organize in Foley Square. They're now marching down Center Street. I believe they're coming up to the intersection of Chamber Street. And once again, if you're just joining us, we are following a rally that just left Foley Square moments ago. There was a rally that started at 9 o'clock this morning. The organization known as CARE 4IF in support of immigrant families and strengthening legal services. There may have been a separate organization which was also staging in Foley Square to hold a rally as well. And we are watching as this group begins to march down. They've been marching down Center Street, passing Chamber Street towards the area of Park Row. It's unclear whether this is the actual CARE 4IF organization that is conducting the march or a separate organization. You can see, though, many of the people marching down Center Street. Police are following. We are also seeing the community relations personnel from the police department as well. And currently, again, they are making their way down Center Street in the direction of Park Row. And now with this group on the move, we are starting to see streets closed off, or at the very least, police trailing the rally now as they try to close off some of the streets at the very least behind them. It's unclear where the march is going, so we're trying to see some of those community relation police officers out in front, trying to anticipate where they may have to block off streets, or at the very least get pedestrians to move to the side. This is currently now turning onto Park Row, just outside of City Hall. We were monitoring a rally that was in Foley Square. It started at 9 o'clock this morning. The organization known as CARE 4IF in support of immigrant families and helping to strengthen their access to legal services. There were two distinct groups in Foley Square, so it is possible this is a different group that is currently conducting this march, although they are holding signs that are in protest of immigrations and custom enforcement. And now we're watching as some of the traffic being held coming off the Brooklyn Bridge as well. That is one area that will be affected by this march, again, as it makes its way down Park Row, just outside of City Hall Park. Unclear where this march plans to go. The police department has been trailing the marchers, as well as we've seen police officers, in particular community relations personnel, walking with the crowd, trying to anticipate where they're going and assist with those situations, such as getting some street closures. There we can see some of the motorcycle personnel of the police department. That is the exit ramp off the Brooklyn Bridge onto Park Row. So try to set up those street closures in anticipation of this crowd as they march again now down towards or along Park Row, just outside of City Hall Park. And we continue to follow a march that has just left Foley Square within the last about 10 minutes. There was a rally ongoing in Foley Square in support of immigrant families. The organization known as Care 4IF, which is looking to help strengthen access to greater legal services for immigrant families in the community. As we were watching that event, we believe there was a second group which was also staging a rally as well, with similar cause in support of immigrant families. One of the groups has now left Foley Square. We watched them as they marched down Center Street, now onto Park Row. They're just outside of City Hall, getting closer to the intersection of Broadway. It's unclear whether this was a planned march or a spontaneous event, or at the moment where they plan to take the march to. The police department has been trying to anticipate some street closures to block vehicle traffic. We've been seeing police cars trail the rally goers, as well as getting ahead of the exit ramps off the Brooklyn Bridge. We're also seeing community relation police officers in the crowd trying to assist as well with escorting pedestrians out of the way or anticipate any further street closures. Again, this march left Foley Square within about the last 10 minutes. Currently marching down Park Road towards the intersection of Broadway. Okay. And to recap what we have been following, we've been watching a march make its way down now at Park Row and the intersection of Broadway. We were following a rally in Foley Square, an organization known as Care 4IF, in support of immigrant families and helping to strengthen their access to greater legal services. That organization composed of New York State elected officials, community advocates, legal service providers, as well as those impacted in the community. We believe there was a second rally as well that also formed in Foley Square. It's unclear which rally these people marching now were associated with. They're just crossing Broadway, making their way out of Park Row and again across Broadway. March left Foley Square at about 9:45. There is also still a separate rally ongoing in Foley Square. The crowd that we've been watching does appear to have signs in opposition to immigration and customs enforcement. So far, the police department has been escorting the march, trying to anticipate some of the street closures. Now making their way across Vesey Street. Again, they just crossed Broadway. You can stay with us here on CBS News New York. We will have the latest on this march rally as well as any other events coming up later in today. You can also join us CBS News New York at noon on the latest on breaking news as well as the events unfolding in Lower Manhattan. For now, this is Jim Smith in Chopper 2. Thank you. Yep, sorry, I was talking to the station. They're going west in a very thin, or very, narrow street, kind of off the nose, so we're still okay.
This has been breaking news.